Hi, welcome to Saved by the Fanatic. This is episode 3. My name is Patrick. I'm a huge Saved by the Bell fan. In my opinion, it is the greatest teen sitcom ever made. This week, we're going to be discussing the episode called Love Letters. The original air date was December 7th of 1988. As I mentioned in the last episode, Summer Love, that episode introduced us to Zack Morris, to Samuel Screech Powers, Lisa Turtle, also Mikey and Nikki. And it also does a good job at talking about Miss Bliss, how she is that mentor, or as Brendan Tartikoff had envisioned her, an inspirating teacher. So we talked about how Zack had lied and tried to manipulate this girl that he really liked, and everything just came to fruition, and she found out that he was lying and broke up with him, and Zack thought his world was going to end only to have Miss Bliss help him feel better. So this week we're going to talk about the episode called Love Letters, and this is the episode. So if you've been a fan like me, you notice that Screech has an infatuation with Lisa and has this huge crush on her and has always had a crush on her, wants to date her, and Lisa that's not what she wants. She wants nothing to do with him. And this episode of Love Letters is the episode. This is the episode where we learn that Screech has a crush on Lisa. And again, this would carry on through the entirety of Saved by the Bell, with the exception of the college years, because Larrick Voorhees was not in the college years. So what it's about. So, okay. Miss Bliss assigns a history paper on the War of 1812. And, of course, Zack doesn't want to do it. So after class, he approaches Screech and talks to him and says, Screech, I was just telling myself, that, Screech is my good buddy, and Screech is like, really? You said that? And he said, yeah, if you ever need anything done, I would, homework done, I'd do anything for you. And Screech is like, yep, same here, Zack. And so right there, boom, Zack's got him. Says, oh, it's funny you should say that. And, if mentions about this, and he talks about, let's talk about this paper. And Screech is like, no way, I'm not doing your paper for you. You crazy? And Zack's like, hey, look at it this way, using that very smooth approach, that trying to be manipulative and using that voice that he uses so well. Look at it this way. I'll owe you a favor. And Screech is like, really? What kind of favor? And Zack, he's like, anything you want. And then, boom, right there, Screech is like, I want a date with Lisa. And Zack wasn't expecting this. Like, he's like, really? Lisa Turtle, the same Lisa that dumped SpaghettiOs on your head last week? And Screech is like, yep, that's the one. And so now Zack has this seemingly impossible task of making Lisa like Screech to go out on a date. So Screech agrees to write this paper, but as payment wants this date with Lisa. So this was the agreement they made. So Zack figures the best route to do this is to write a series of love letters. And instead of signing Screech's name, he signs them as Secret Admirer. And so he writes, unfortunately, these love letters fall into the wrong hands and they cause all sorts of embarrassment and confusion. So the mix-up. So Miss Bliss and Lisa are walking in the hallway. And this was after Lisa had already received her first love letter. And she has it. So they're walking in the hallway and they run into this other teacher. They're kind of walking hastily. And they run into this other teacher, it's Jerry Vick, his name is. They run into each other, and it's just like classic. Run into each other, and papers fly everywhere, and get all mixed up on the floor. So, Mr. Vick had asked, was everyone okay? And Lisa had mentioned, was my hair okay? And Miss Bliss like, yeah, she's fine. So Lisa goes on her way. Well, she doesn't realize that she doesn't have the love letter anymore. So as they're bent over, they're talking, picking up papers. Mr. Building comes by. It's like, is everyone, what's happening? If you guys are out here, that means you have classrooms full of the children, which isn't good. He bends down, helps them gather their papers. And Mr. Vick is like, oh, I'm happy I'm happy we ran into each other, just kind of try not to, make a joke or whatever. And then he's like, oh, you know what I mean. And I also had mentioned that, made a mention as they're talking that she was pretty. So as they're parting ways, Miss Bliss is like, next time I see you, I'll hunk. Meant to say honk, but said hunk. And kind of embarrassed by that because, he's a good looking guy. So anyways, they part ways. So, the embarrassment comes in. So they show Miss Bliss. She's at home. Her and Tina Pellegrino, Miss Pellegrino, the music and arts teacher, they're at home grading papers. And Miss Pellegrino is like helping her go through the papers and organize. She comes across this note that Lisa had gotten and is reading it. And it's just very, very gripping, very kind of very, sexy, whatever word you want to use. And Miss Bliss is like, wait a minute, that's not mine. And Miss Pellegrino's like, well, it was in your papers. And then she's like, oh, wait a minute. And just kind of tries to make this connection that this Jerry Vick guy had wrote this to her. At least she thought that he wrote it for her. So the next day in school, Miss Bliss and Miss Pellegrino are sitting in the cafeteria. They're sitting at the table together, and Jerry Vick is at the table next to him. And Miss Pellegrino's trying to give her the, go ahead, go talk to him, whatever. And so, I should mention that Jerry Vick mentioned to Miss Bliss that he's a substitute there. So anyway, that comes into play. So she goes over there and they're talking, and he's very polite. Do you want to sit down, Miss Bliss? And so she sits down. So they're talking, and Miss Bliss is rambling on about, I don't see, why we can't go out and blah, blah, blah. And Jerry Vick's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, I don't see why we can't go out after, you leave JFK as a middle school teacher because they can't. Miss Bliss had been talking about how she doesn't fish off the company pier, and Jerry Vick's very confused by this. And she's like, I don't see why we can't go out after you leave JFK. And Mr. Vick is like, that's a very enticing offer. Would you mind if I brought my wife? And Miss Bliss is like, wait a minute, you're married? And Mr. Vick's like, yes, I'm happily married. And so Miss Bliss is just like, well, what about the letter you wrote? And Jerry Vick is like, what are you talking about? And Miss Bliss is like, I'm talking about the letter you obviously didn't write. And so she's like, oh, what color red am I? And anyways, Mr. Vick is like, oh, don't, again, very, very nice, don't be embarrassed, blah, blah, blah. So Miss Bliss gets up and leaves. And she's just like, oh, if it wasn't him, who was it? And then realizes, wait a minute, Mr. Building was there too. So now she thinks Mr. Building wrote her this love letter. So anyways, later on in the episode, Mr. Building approaches Miss Bliss. And Miss Bliss had asked how he was doing, and Mr. Building had made the comment that he was very lonely. And so this throws up a red flag for Miss Bliss, right? Because she thinks that he wrote this love letter. So he's like, I've been very lonely. My wife is in Connecticut visiting her sister. And says, well, I need to talk to you. And Miss Bliss goes, well, how long is she going to be gone for? And Mr. Building's like, several weeks, but you're changing the subject. And as he's talking to her, he's kind of inching closer to her, and Miss Bliss is backing up as like he's trying to invade her personal bubble, and she's not comfortable with that. And Miss Bliss said he keeps talking about how he needs this, how he needs that, and Miss Bliss is like, I'm not that kind of woman. And Mr. Building's like, what kind of woman does it take to fill out requisition forms? And Miss Bliss is, like kind of relieved, and says, I am that kind of woman. So he's like, okay, good. I'll come and pick him up in your classroom after class or after school. And Miss Bliss says, well, why don't you come during class? They're done, because she doesn't really feel comfortable with him being in the classroom with her alone because she thinks that he wrote this love letter. So he goes, okay, fine. So fast forward a little bit, and they're in class. Lisa gets another love letter. And this is like before the bell rang, so the students are kind of talking, having their cyber conversations. Lisa is talking to Nikki about this love letter, and they're just kind of one-on-one, like they're not broadcasting it, they're just talking very quietly. So Lisa had mentioned that in the love letter they're going to meet in the cafeteria. So as she says this, Miss Bliss comes over, notices that they're reading. She's reading this love letter or this letter. Miss Bliss doesn't know what it is. She just sees that they're reading something. Doesn't realize it's a love letter. Just knows that it's a letter. So she naps it out of her hand. Says, "I'll take that," and she puts it on the desk. Where she put it though, there's a folder open on the desk, and Miss Bliss had put this note on that folder, not thinking what she was doing. During the class, Mr. Belding comes in and says, "I'm here for the requisition forms." And Miss Bliss, again, relieved, says, "Oh, they're on my desk." So Mr. Belding goes over on this folder and closes the folder that this love letter is laying on, right? So he closes the folder, he takes them, and he leaves the classroom. As he's walking, he's kind of going through and trying to find the requisition forms. He comes across the love letter that Zack had meant for Lisa. So he's reading it, and he's thinking to himself, "Oh, Miss Bliss, wow, I can't believe this." And so Miss Bliss goes and finds Mr. Belding in the hallway, and right before she talks to him, Mr. Belding's like, wait. I'm really flattered, but this can't be. I'm a married man. I'm the principal. You're a teacher. And Miss Bliss is like, "What are you talking about?" And Mr. Belding's like, "Well, this love letter he wrote me." And Miss Bliss looks at it and is like, "Wait, I didn't write that." And shows him the love letter that she has. And they kind of they take the love letters from each other. And Mr. Belding, and at the same time, they go, "Well, I didn't write this and I didn't write that." So now there's this confusion because there's these love letters, and who wrote them? They don't know. They thought they were for each other. So Miss Bliss finally is like, wait a minute. I understand what's going on. I get this. So she grabs a love letter from Mr. Belding and makes a kind of a funny statement. Mr. Belding's like, "Well, what's going on?" And Miss Bliss is like, "Why should I tell you? You just dumped me," making a joke out of the letters. Anyway, so she's in the classroom. She has Zack and Screech come in. And of course, the first person that comes to mind is Zack, because we all know the type of guy Zack is, and she knows Zack very well. So they come in the room, and she talks about what's happening and what's going on, and Zack denies these letters, and Screech, of course, being as honest as he is, basically spills the beans, and Miss Bliss is like, "Oh, I see. So you wrote the paper for Zack. So what did Zack promise you in return?" And he says, "Well, he promised me a date with Lisa." And Miss Bliss goes on this rant to Zack about how he took advantage of Screech, and this and that, and how these love letters had caused confusion and embarrassment. And Zack's like, "Well, where did you get those love letters?" And Miss Bliss is like, "Oh, it isn't important." And anyway, so Miss Bliss, Zack apologizes, and Miss Bliss is like, a cute smile and apology isn't going to get you through life, kiddo. And so Zack's like, "Well, I'll write my own paper." And Miss Bliss is like, "Yeah, you will. Unfortunately, I'm giving you a 0. And Zack was just taken aback, like, a 0? That's the worst. Can I at least have an F? And Miss Bliss would not acquiesce and gave him a 0. And then told Screech that, "Well, I can't let you unpunished," and lowered his letter grade. And anyways, they leave the room, and Screech asks Zack, what did Miss Bliss mean by you took advantage of me? And Zack explained, "Well, I did. That's why I wrote the love letter. I signed as your secret admirer because, if it was signed as your name, Lisa would have screamed, and, you would have never wrote my paper." And so Zack and Screech is like, "Yeah, you did take advantage of me." And Zack's, "I'm sorry." And Screech just kind of let it go and saying, "It's a good week. I was in love," and blah, blah, blah. And So then Zack is like, Screech, you're not such a bad guy. And Screech says thanks and says, would it be okay if I told the other guys you said that to me? And Zack makes a joke, goes, yeah, I wouldn't mind, but go ahead and tell them anyway. And Screech is like, they wouldn't believe me. Anyways, the episode ends. Lisa's waiting in the cafeteria, and Screech approaches the cafeteria, and he gets like all brave. He pops his collar up and kind of fixes his hair and gets trying to build up the courage, and finally he throws up the collar and he walks into the cafeteria, and all of a sudden you just hear Lisa screaming because she finds out that Screech is her secret admirer. So, again, this is a good episode because it does more character developing on Zack. It just, again, he'll do what he can to get what he wants. He didn't want to write this paper, so he made this deal with Screech, and he wanted to wait till the paper was written before the big reveal that Screech was his secret admirer. We also see that this is the beginning, of Screech's crush on Lisa. And again, this follows all the way through the end of Saved by the Bell, with the exception, of course, of the college years, but also when Screech starts dating Violet and Bickerstaff for the few episodes that Tori Spelling is in the series. So that's kind of cool. You get to see the kind of the beginning of that crush. Also, this episode proves that Screech will do anything for Zack. And again, I talked about this before. He wrote his paper. There's another episode where he does the science project. He goes in, he takes pictures of the girls in the pool for a swimsuit calendar. He dresses up like Barbara Bush to switch tapes in the subliminal messaging episode. He dresses up like a girl to record them singing for the infamous Jessie song episode where Jessie gets hooked on caffeine pills. So he doesn't really think about the risk. Like, he doesn't really care about the risk, but he just does it for Zack because Zack, I don't know if you want to say manipulates him, but he, I guess he kind of does in a way. There's times where he's like the one episode where they bug a slumber party that Jesse's having, and they bug the party because they're going to talk about guys, and Zack wants to find out if Kelly's going to go out with him or Slater. So Screech is like, I don't think so. And then Zack uses a manipulative tactics. He's like, well, you'll get to find out, Screech or Lisa's most inner, deepest thoughts about you. And of course, Screech is like, oh yeah, absolutely. So it just proves that Screech will do anything for Zack, regardless of any consequences. He just doesn't care. So that's Love Letters. Another, again, good episode. A lot of character development. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you hit the subscribe button. I hope you're enjoying Saved by the Fanatic. I know I am. Again, greatest show ever made. Greatest teen sitcom ever. So until next time, we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys later. Again, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.